Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. And first and foremost, congratulations on it being your 50th anniversary of your professional career. You have been such a trailblazer for flutists all over the world. And throughout your career, you have worked with legends in the music world, composers and musicians alike. And one of those being the iconic Aaron Copland. There are so many aspects of your life that I would love to discuss with you, but for the purpose of this interview, we will focus on your collaboration with Aaron Copland, if that's okay with you. Um,
Absolutely.
you recently performed the second and third movements of the Copland Duo for flute and piano with pianist Michael Boriskin. Is that
Horiston, yes.
Boriskin,
Mhm.
Michael Boriskin, on NPR's Tiny Desk series. And you performed it at Copland's home in Cortlandt Manor, New York. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And what's even more incredible is that the desk that you see in the video on NPR's website is the very desk on which Copland wrote the duo. And Borskin was playing Copland's own piano in the video as well. Was that that must have been like a starstruck moment for you?
Oh, completely. And then, of course, being in the house and having to, I used the other rooms to warm up and just, it was the back room. And I don't remember, this was not my first time at the house. The
Okay.
first time I had gone to the house, let's see if we get the chronology. I played in I started my employment with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra right out of Juilliard. So I graduated 72. So the summer of 72, I was with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra in residence in Bemidji, Minnesota, which I adored because I'm a swimmer and they have endless lakes. That's the land of Paul Bunyan and his baby blue ox. Okay. So then he came my first season, 72-73. And here, let me just grab this quickly. This is a very special
Oh my
Italian
goodness.
thing where I put my autographed scores and things in, right? So I have, I'm just going to, the music is kind of crumbly here, but let me just get this here. It is, he wrote it. He wrote for me. And he inscribed my score. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my goodness. For
Can you
Carol
see
Wincenc.
that?
Yes.
For Carol Wincenc, who plays my duo beautifully. Aaron Copland, 1973.
That's incredible.
So I really treasure that. I have autographs from working with Messiaen and Toru Takamitsu and Elliott Carter. And, I started collecting things when I would play their pieces. Oh, I have wonderful things. So anyway, that was 73. So I was, the piece had just been written. It was still kind of hot off the press. And so I asked him, actually, I was quite forthcoming because he was conducting the orchestra for that series of concerts. I think he probably was with us maybe a total of a week and a half. And so I really, was the principal flute of the orchestra there. And we didn't do the 13 instrument version. We did the fuller version. I mean, there were 24 in the orchestra at the time I joined it. So he had a very workaday manner in front of the orchestra. It was all business, pretty much. And I'll never forget at the peak of Appalachian Spring, which is so tricky. I mean, his music is tricky, the lineup rhythmically. And we're in the most crushingly, beautifully emotive section. And he taps on the stand and he goes, gentlemen, no sentimentality. No sentimentality. And I'm thinking, first of all, there were 5 women in the orchestra at the time, and I'm staring right at him. And he's very matter of fact, like he was irritated. He wanted he wanted something specific, and he was not as polished a conductor as some who could come in, for example. I mean, Jean-Pierre Rampal came in all the time. Every season that I played there, we got to be very, very close. And he was conducting, all kinds of people that are known as brilliant soloists or composers, but they still conducted the orchestra. So that was quite a shock because I had idolized Mr. Copland growing up.
Mhm.
I first heard, probably the first piece of his I heard was probably Ballet for Martha, Appalachian Spring. So then, of course, I heard the Billy the Kid and El Salon Mexico, and the list goes on, and the symphonies and the fanfare for the common man. And, so his chamber music I was less familiar with, so I started listening. And the duo came as a kind of a surprise after all that I heard. And I was sort of wanting to have the experience of, was I going to revisit compositionally what he had done in all these previous works? Okay, so this was 1973. So he was 73 years old because he was born in 1900. And this is a very late work for him, relatively. It's an amalgam of many of his other like a string symphony that he had written, and there are traces of some sentiments, forgive the word. So, Mr. Copland, if you're looking down on this interview, I just want to always honor in the piece the experience. So when I approached him, they did not program the duo on any kind of concert, but I asked my conductor, Dennis Russell Davies, I asked him, what do you feel that I ask? And he said, go for it. Let's see if he can find some time. So we met at Dennis Russell Davies' home, his beautiful, old, wonderful, big palatial home in downtown St. Paul. And he set up a wonderful time. I think Mr. Copland only had about an hour and a half at most.
Oh my goodness.
And he had a lot on his plate. He was such a busy man. So when we started playing, I kept wanting to say, how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to play this? What should I be doing? Am I doing all the right things? I mean, I was in my early 20s,
Yeah.
and I just spent the week with him in the orchestra. So watching. So I wasn't exactly a deer in headlights. I felt confident about being prepared to do this.
Right.
And I, of course, practiced it and perfected it meticulously as best I could. And the whole time, I have to tell you, he sat at the piano and he was so much fun. And he said, I can't play this thing. I really can't play this thing. He said, I don't think he ever said, I'm sorry, I can't play this. But it pretty much was, he kept saying, oh my goodness, I can't play this. I can't play this. And I would say, Mr. Copland, especially the slow movement, which starts with he does his bitonality where he visits major, minor, but two keys going at the same time. And he said, honey, you sound great. Just do what you're doing. He said, it's fine. Just do what you're doing. So then we kind of got into a groove because he was grappling with the piano part.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, think about, he was a legend, and
right.
I'm there with him in this living room, this beautiful living room with a beautiful 9-foot grand, and he's sitting down and he's sort of at the piano trying to, he was kind of, he kept pushing his glasses back up on his nose like that, he was just kind of dealing with that, So it was really a very, very special time. And of course, just to have him play those jaunty rhythms in both the first and second movement, I mean, it was I was just pinching myself totally.
When you did collaborate with him, did he give you license to make your own musical choices with the duo? And were there any
Pretty
parts of the
much.
piece that he felt very strongly about how it should be played?
Well, of course, because I'd been working with him in the orchestra, I got a real sense and I intuited. And the piece is very well written with the directives. They're all in English, lively with bounce, warm sound. Those were sorts of things that were vibrato related, that I may have said, is that the kind of vibrato or not? And he just kept saying, yes, yes, that's fine. That's fine. You sound wonderful. So I think, I have a very strong musical background from my family, and I grew up, it was my language. It was my first language, music and hearing chamber music, with the Budapest String Quartet in our living room and, all the great conductors, because my father was the first concertmaster of the Buffalo Philharmonic, and then he became their associate conductor when Cripps was there. So we had quite a momentum of wonderful people. So I was able to intuit a lot. And then also I danced very seriously. So any kind of music for dance, interested me too. So I knew that I kind of intuited it. And I'm strong that way, kind of being able to crawl into the head space a little bit as best I can. Now I was very young, and I was really keen and quick, and I just followed him. But he never said, "Oh, I give you artistic license." No, no, he never said that. But I do feel that and then all the many collaborations, like the first recording I did was with Samuel Sanders, and of course then Sam, and that was one of your questions, was every time you play it,
Mhm.
is it going to change? Every time you hear a student play it, is it going to change? Yes, in its own unique way, because everybody has their own voice. My role is to guide as best I can to honor the jaunty rhythms. For example, I confess, my first recording, it says 96 to the quarter, the ya bum ba ba yaga yaga dum ba. And I think in my youthfulness of when I recorded it, or it could have been the influence of Sam. I think it's much faster than that. Ooh. But I think I like to really capture as best I can for myself and also the player and the young player, if they've never had much experience with Copland's music, to try to honor the dance element when it's very obvious. And also the ragtime and jazzy element, uh, the swing,
Mhm.
the swing of those sections. And then the more abstract, slow things, that is a voice. I always tell my students, don't look at the music at the beginning. You've got to hear it like an improvisation, because it is. It's like an invocation or a prayer or a mood or a search of sorts. It's not so clear cut that it has to be exactly a certain way, but it does have to have a momentum that will work. Yes.
Right.
So
Thank you so much for taking the time out of
welcome.
your extremely hectic schedule to talk with me about this particular experience. I really appreciate it. And I think it's just invaluable information. So thank you so
Well,
much.
no, it's important for me too, because it brings me back to the very moments that are indelible. And I'm sure there are many, I mean, it wasn't recorded, it wasn't videoed.
Yeah.
Uh, so I have to rely on that. But that's the beauty, is that the printed notes and the score, as long as you've got an instrument to bring it to life, is there forever.
Right.
It's immortalized. So I mean, anyway, this was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.